Welcome back, and in rugby tonight we'll be speaking to David Ferguson from the Scotsman. In about 10 minutes time we'll talk about Scotland's World Cup preparations, about 3 weeks away from their first game. But first of all, we're going to talk about the domestic leagues and cups, which of course been restructured this year. So we're joined by John Davidson, a man of many hats. You were last here, I think it was probably in about May, when we talked through the proposals. You obviously chaired the committee that looked at this. It went to the AGM in June and has gone through pretty much in its entirety, so you'll obviously be happy with what went on at the AGM. Well,
we were extremely happy. The consultation that we did was very wide. In fact, we covered north, south, east and west. We did it 2 times to make sure that we had a full grip of what the clubs wanted. And essentially the brief that I was given was to bring a motion to the AGM that would go through the AGM. So that's what we did. It was a little bit hairy at the finish. Nerves were jangling a little bit. On the day, we were absolutely delighted with the level of support that we got for the complete package, and which just reflected that was exactly what Scottish Rugby were after.
Talk us through what the changes are for this coming season.
Essentially what we have is it was Premier 1, Premier 2, Premier 3 and National 1, and then everyone below that goes into a regional scenario. So that is stage number 1, and all the regional districts are into 10-team leagues, so they will be playing an 18-game season, which will in turn allow them to finish the rugby by the end of March, which in previous surveys that we've done, rugby people, they want to start at the beginning of September and finish at the end of March. So that's what we've been able to deliver.
It makes it a massive season for a lot of our local clubs, Premier 2 clubs in particular. That might make a bit more sense if we look at the actual structure. So talk us through how Premier 1 and Premier 2 are going to work this year.
Well, obviously we have the first tranche of games, and once everybody plays, everybody wants, then we split the leagues. So Premier 1, Premier A, B and C will have each of 8 teams, and the guys who what will be Premier 1 next year will be the split of the 8 plus 2 that finish top of Premier B.
Right, so effectively the same format as we had last year, when there was 3 teams of 8, but there was 4 out of Premier B. There were 4 out of the 8 went up last year, so that's effectively just going to be 2 that
this year, because we had 12-team leagues last year, but now we have 10 teams.
Yes.
So, and then in Premier 2 we have the 6 other clubs in Premier B will finish with the top 4 in Premier C, will make up the new National League.
Right, so just to go over that again, so the following year we've effectively got 2 national leagues. We've got a Premier of 10 and a National League of 10.
That's correct, yes, which was the old Premier 2. And then after that we have the Championship A and B, which will be amalgamation of National 1 and Premier 3 clubs.
Yes, so Premier C, after it's created after that's going to be after the first 11 games, isn't it? So Premier C, where there wasn't a lot to play for last season, you're desperate to stay out of the bottom 4 places this year.
Well, that's right. It's to be in the top 20, and that's going to mean a lot. But yes, it's going to be brutal for some clubs. But at the end of the day, the way that all this is to make Scottish rugby better, to put more competitive edge in, players get more concentration of games, playing less games, and hopefully they'll be able to do more strength and conditioning through the summer with a shorter season. So that's essentially what we thought would be the right thing.
Yep. And the other thing I wanted to talk is, obviously you made changes to the Cup as well. Do you want to talk us through them?
Yes, the Cup. The Cup has been given back to the 4 districts in Scotland. So we have the top 36 clubs that are playing in the Cup, and then everyone else in the Shield and the Bowl back down there. So, for instance, what has happened in the Borders is the 7 Premier clubs have decided that they'll play one another in a league system, so they're playing one another each one, so that's playing 6 games, and then the winner of that will be the qualifier, which will join the winners from the other competitions for the semi-finals of the Cup. The other teams in the Borders who are playing for the Bowl and the Shield, they are doing a knockout scenario. So it just all to do with a different amount of clubs in each prospective division of the cup as to how they've formulated it.
Which again, I think it's a great sort of framework, as you say, allows the districts to do something. You're saying there's a bit of an anomaly in the Glasgow area. You were saying on the other side.
Yeah, well, we have a situation in Glasgow where Glasgow Accies and Glasgow GHK, they haven't played one another for 20 years. Right. They're 3 miles apart. They're playing one another for the first time in competition, and the hospitality sold out. They've got sponsors coming out of directions that they never thought would happen. They are over the moon with that. So there's situations like this happening all over Scotland that people have to grasp, get on, take the occasion, and there will be money and opportunity abounding, we hope.
Now, as I say, we've got David Ferguson, the chief rugby writer for the Scotsman, is on the phone. He's normally on I think a yoghurt pot and a bit of string. Where are you tonight, David? Have you got a good reception for us?
Yeah,
excellent.
10 tonight, no problem. So it's much better than the yoghurt pot.
Now, you probably just caught the end of our chat there with John. What's your thoughts on the changes to the structure and what it means for our local clubs this season?
Well, I mean, to be honest, primarily I'm just delighted that they have made the change. That the clubs, I know it was hard work for John. Everybody who comes into the SRU and looks at change, they can be sometimes quite surprised at how hard it can be, even when you think you've got all the clubs on side, to still drive it through. And you won't be surprised to hear I've had people and clubs on the phone being critical of some of the moves, and there's some clubs in Division 3 who, ambitious clubs who are not going to get the chance of promotion this year, and some of them are upset, but there's always going to be some pain when you do change. And I've gone to clubs, as you have, Bruce. We've gone to clubs up and down the country over the last few years where everybody has been moaning the lack of sponsors, the lack of supporters turning out, and the way the game is died but has struggled. And the only way you change that is by coming up with change, and they've done that, they've embraced that. I would like to see them go further and Division 1, Premier 1 in years to come be even tighter, perhaps even smaller, and really become very competitive, a real bridge between the club game and the pro game. But they've taken a very good first step, I think.
Yeah. Now, what I really wanted to chat tonight, of course, was the Scotland's preparations for the World Cup. I think its first game is 3 weeks tomorrow against Romania. First of all, a lot of talk about the fact that Scotland have only gone with 2 warm-up games. In your mind, has that been the optimum for Scotland?
No, I'm concerned about that. I've written about that the last 2 or 3 weeks, that it's a concern for me that there are a number of players that we've spoken to in the last 2 weeks, Scotland players, who haven't played for a long time. Max Evans today was reminding us that he hadn't played since the Calcutta Cup match because he had an elbow injury. Remember, there were 5 players, John Barclay, Ross Ford, Alan Jacobson, Al Kellogg, Richie Gray, that were taken out of Glasgow and Edinburgh's teams for the last few weeks of the season. Now, a lot of boys have got match fitness to pick up. They certainly look very fit, they look very strong. Max Evans has put on a few kilograms in weight and power. Strength tests apparently are phenomenal. So these boys are very fit and strong, and some of them quicker than ever, which is great. But they have to get the match fitness, and I hope they can. But I fear that they see the Romania and the Georgia games as further warm-ups, and you can't take games in the World Cup that lightly. We've seen Scotland in the last couple of World Cups struggle in the first 2 games, so they've got to really be hitting the spot and be peaking, quite quickly into the World Cup. So it's a fear, it's a concern of mine, but we've got strength and depth there that we've not had before, and I know that Andy Robertson perhaps feels that he couldn't take any more games because they might have suffered as Wales, and we've seen England having a few games. They've lost a number of key players, and you've got to understand that we perhaps don't quite have the resources that some of these other nations do.
Yeah, I mean, the Ireland game, we chatted about it. I mean, I don't think anybody was overly impressed by it. They got the result, but not a great performance. Italy tomorrow, 14 changes. I mean, what do you think, or who do you think Andy Robinson is particularly looking at against Italy?
I think there's a couple of key positions that he's, I wouldn't say that he hasn't made up his mind. I think he probably has. I think Robinson has been working this daily for the last 6 months, so I'm pretty sure he knows what he's wanting to do and what 30 he wants to name on Monday to go to the World Cup. But there's 2 positions that I think are intriguing, and that's number 8 and on the wing. I don't think he'll take 4 wingers, so I think Simon Daniele, Nicky Walker are probably fighting it out for one last wing spot, and that'll be interesting to see how they go, because they'll both get a chance tomorrow against Italy. And the number 8, Johnny Beattie, knows, I think, that he had to have a good performance against Ireland to nail that number 8 jersey, and I think the coaches wanted him to do that, and he didn't. You know, he wasn't poor, but he didn't really put his mark on the game, and he had a lot of ball. There was plenty of go forward ball, so it wasn't like it was a Scottish pack that was up against it. So Richie Vernon's coming in tomorrow, and you know, he's champing at the bit. He wants to prove he deserves a place in the squad, and I think it's probably 2 from 3. I think it's Richie Vernon, Johnny Beattie and Alistair Strawcosh perhaps. I think they'll take 2 of them. I'm not sure if it's a straight number 8 call between Beattie and Vernon. I think Strawcosh might come into that, but I'd like to see them take Strawcosh, and it'll be interesting to see how Vernon goes tomorrow.
Yeah, and another 2 areas that have been a lot of talking about is the front row and the scrum halves, because we've got 4 quality scrum halves, and Greg Laidlaw, a local guy, among them. I'm hoping he's not going to be the unlucky one that'll miss out. And of course, Ewan Murray just coming back into the front row. A lot of talk about him. What's your thoughts on those 2 positions?
Yeah, it's a good one, Bruce. I fear that the coaches are looking to take boys on reputations. They talk about how invaluable it is to have boys on form. Now, if you're taking the players on form, you would take Greg Laidlaw, you would take the 4 props that were there, certainly ahead of Ewan Murray. But I think that they see, Andy Robinson sees Ewan Murray and Chris Cussiter and Mike Blair as being a step above the rest of the boys that we have, and I think that's probably accurate when they're on their game and when they're playing to their peak form. I think they are world class, but we haven't seen that for some time. Chris Cussiter, we haven't seen play since in a Scotland jersey since March 2010. I've done a big interview with him tomorrow, where he opens his heart on how hard it's been for him for the last 16 months. He lost his father last summer as well to cancer, and it's been a really difficult time for Chris. So they've had their battles. Mike Blair's has battles with ankle injuries, and Rory Lawson has been the one that's come through and taken the mantle and deserves it. Greg Laidlaw's shown with Edinburgh that he's a player. We knew that about Greg, and we knew he could step up. He's not had the chances he maybe deserves yet at international level, and I would love to see him go to the World Cup. I just fear that the coaches just wanted Ewan Murray and Chris Cussiter to make this game, and they have done, and I don't think they're as concerned now about how much game time they get off the bench tomorrow. They feel that they're justified to the rest of the players, the squad and the public, that it's right to take them because they're fit enough to make it for the game, and that's a concern, and that's going to be a gamble. You're taking players who still have to prove themselves and still have to find their match fitness out there, so rather than boys who are there and have proved it. So that's a concern.
Now, running out of time as usual, David, but just quickly, some thoughts on the preparations of the other home nations, what you've seen in their games so far?
Yeah, pleasing for Scotland, I think. England have not looked impressive. Wales and Ireland, I'm not worried too much about them, because I don't envisage us seeing them in the World Cup unless we were to get to the semi-finals or final. I've looked more at Argentina and England. Georgia have been going well in their games over the past year with Richard Dixon at the helm. The way England are playing, and the way England want to keep playing to Martin Johnson's style, keeping the ball in the forwards and not making the most use of their backs, I hope that continues for another month or so anyway. Yeah.
And have you got yourself talked into a trip to New Zealand? You'll be heading out there, are you?
I have, thankfully. Scotsman have managed to come good on that. So yes, I'll have 5 weeks. It's disappointing my daughters, I have to say, but 5 weeks in New Zealand. Yeah, I feel that we've got a chance. We do have a squad. I am concerned that they're not quite there yet, and they need more time. But the coaches are confident they can do that over the next 3 weeks. And I do believe we have a squad that is capable of beating England and Argentina, and Georgia and Romania. So it's whether they can come good on the day, really.